Hola, ¿cómo están mis amigos? How's everybody? Today's video is going to be how I learned Spanish. Now, there's a lot of people who I work with on a daily basis who are like, oh wow, dude, that's so awesome that you know Spanish. I wish I knew Spanish, or I'd love to learn Spanish. And even people I just meet in my daily life. And it's funny, one of the guys that I work with, the guy that mentors me, he always tells me how, because he's fluent in Spanish, he tells me how he can't even remember how many people have come to him and said, oh, can you teach me Spanish? Or I'd love to learn Spanish, the same thing. And I'm the only one that's actually followed through with it. So today I'm going to show you guys, or teach you guys, how I learned Spanish and the tips and tricks that I used. And so the first one, staying in line with that story, is to put your money where your mouth is. Literally where your mouth is, where you speak. Pay someone. The first thing that I did, I took Spanish for a few years in high school, but it was high school. I was just messing around with my buddies. I didn't really retain anything but a bunch of random vocabulary, biblioteca, baño, like just random stuff, basic conjugation, but I could not speak. I could not have a conversation more than like, hola, ¿cómo estás? But pay someone. I actually paid a native speaker. She lives in Oaxaca, Mexico. I was taking 1 hour, one-on-one lessons, 5 days a week. So it was pretty intense, and I had homework every single day, and it reminded me why I did not go to college, because even though the homework was only like 20, 30 minutes, it was grueling. So college was not for me. It was just a good reminder. So no, seriously though, pay someone to cut the learning curve for you. Especially since she was in Mexico, it was dirt cheap for me. I paid her like $300 a month for one-on-one Zoom lessons, which is insane because, of course, the dollar goes a lot farther when you convert it into pesos. So pay someone to help you cut the learning curve, get your basics down. And I did that for about 8 months. I stopped because she had some travel, and I probably could pick it back up, but I've immersed myself so much in it, which is the second point, or the second tip, is complete immersion. Now, it's not practical for a lot of people to achieve complete immersion and move to Latin America, or if you're learning French, to move to France or wherever. So what I did, I didn't leave the United States, but I immersed myself in communities that spoke that language. So I lived in Southern California, and in Southern California, there's a lot of Latinos. And so you can find these communities that speak primarily Spanish. So in my business, I would work primarily in those areas so that I could have as many repetitions as possible and practice my Spanish in those areas. But this goes even farther than that. Now I'm in Florida, and I work primarily in these Spanish neighborhoods. So literally about 80%, I would say almost 85 to 90% of my conversations on a daily basis are in Spanish. And so it's just the more repetitions that you can get. But it goes beyond just that. Also immerse yourself with the entertainment that you have, like any shows you watch or movies that you watch. I love Narcos. Narcos is a great show, and half of it's in Spanish. I was like, oh, this is perfect. I'm killing two birds with one stone. A quick tip is to watch Disney movies or kids movies that you know the plot of in Spanish, because it's like you already know what's happening, and you're hearing and you're seeing it in Spanish, and you can associate it. So things that you already know what's going on in Spanish, you can pick it up because you know the plot of the story. So any movies or shows, watch them in Spanish. Just put the subtitles on if you're having a hard time. That's what I would do. I just put the subtitles on in English, and I can just associate. Be careful though, the translations are not always accurate, and so I ended up a couple times saying the wrong word. I would bring it back to my teacher, and I accidentally cussed her out a couple times because the way the words translate on the subtitles, and then even within different cultures, within the Latino community, like words in Colombia can mean something different than the same word in Mexico. They can have different meanings. So be careful with that. But ChatGPT is great for translate. That's very accurate. However, Google Translate, that type of stuff, just be wary. But like food, go to your local restaurants in that language. Like I've started picking up the culture. One thing that we did in high school that I thought was really awesome is, in order to learn the language, you learn the culture about it too, because it's a different way of thinking. And I think one thing that's super cool is that you can have a different personality in this language. So I kind of have a different personality when I speak Spanish. Just the way that I think, and kind of like how aggressive I can be and funny I can be and maybe blunt. You can act a little different, which is cool. So go to these local restaurants, get immersed in the culture itself, the food. Music is huge because you get to hear it as well, and you want to hear the way the words roll off the tongue. And the different accents are crazy in Spanish. Like I work primarily with Cubans, and I've told them, I was like, look, you guys sound like you're drunk. The way that the words, they speak in cursive almost. The words are always almost together. They speak very fast. So music is a cool one. One thing that I did, I would get my favorite song in Spanish, and then I would translate it to English. And so I could understand what it meant, pick up different words, and that type of thing. However, my next point, number 3, is to stop translating, which I know is counterintuitive. However, this is probably the most important lesson to actually learning a language and becoming fluent. It's like the next step up from very beginner, is to stop translating. And I learned this from my great buddy. He told me he's fluent, and he said you need to stop translating words where when you see an object you go, oh, like if I have an umbrella in my hand, this is an umbrella, or I see the object, I see what that is, then I go, it's an umbrella, and then I go to Spanish, oh, sombrilla, right? Eliminate the middle ground there, which is me saying umbrella in the first place. See the object and go, oh, that thing is a sombrilla. That's not an umbrella, which is a sombrilla as well. It's just a sombrilla. So just take out the middle ground there. It's like when kids learn, like think of an infant, right? When you go, here I'm drinking water out of this, right? You go, this is red, right? We don't go, if we're trying to teach the baby English, we don't go, this is rojo, and rojo means red. We just know. We just go, this is red. We cut out the middle ground there. So stop translating the words when you're seeing things like, these are manos. These are not hands, which are also manos. These are my manos, my piel, like just different things like el piso. Just, you have to stop translating the words in English and then trying to remember what they are in that language. So cut out the middle ground there and just start to recognize objects and actions for what they are in that language, and do not go, oh, that is this thing in English, which means this thing in Spanish. So just start thinking in that language, which is my next one. Start thinking in the language without saying it, right? Because, we have all these thoughts, we talk to ourselves all day long. Just start thinking in that language, right? It's very easy to get extra repetitions there. I know we talk to ourselves literally all day long. Just challenge yourself to do it in that language. It's going to be hard at first, and you're going to get frustrated, right? Because you're like, I'm not even talking to anybody. I'm just talking to myself. But think in that language. That's another big one. And this is kind of when you're really starting to pick up steam and you're doing a good job with immersion and you're adding all these things in. This is when you know that you're starting to find success, is when you start instinctively thinking in that language. And one up is when you start dreaming in that language. That's how you know, like, okay, you're really starting to pick it up, because subconsciously, when you stub your foot, you'd be like, ah, mierda, or like, whatever it is, not, oh shit. And then like you translate it again, it's that you stop translating. It's just instinctively, that's what happens, right? So when you start dreaming and you start thinking in that language, that's how you know you're starting to pick it up. So these are just a few things that I've used to actually learn the language itself without having to move to that country. You don't have to do that. I know you might think, oh, like I totally wish I could. I'd love to learn this language. Or, even in like the United States, I would say, maybe Chinese, Mandarin would be a hard language to learn because there's not that much immersion you can get, but you can find communities that speak these languages, and you can do all these other things rather than just saying, oh, I'm not going to learn Chinese or Mandarin because I can't move to China. Like, that's just an excuse. So you can find other ways to immerse yourself. Watch, if you want to learn Japanese, like start watching anime. I don't know. You can do all these different things. Go to these local restaurants, listen to the music, listen to podcasts, translate them. And then once you translate them, stop translating. That's the next level up. start thinking in that language, and you'll start to see success in there. Also, one last thing I wanted to add. I actually cut the video and I forgot about this, and this is super cool. I met a guy who studied linguistics, and I forget the exact name of his major, but it was literally how people learn languages. And he was fluent in Spanish and I think Portuguese and maybe another language. But he told me, he said, because I told him, I'm learning Spanish and I'm super excited about it. And he said, learning languages is a gradient. And I thought this was so cool. So when you start learning a language, don't get discouraged if you've been putting in, all this time and effort. And then, after maybe a couple months, you still can't understand a whole lot of what people are saying. You're going to start out at literally 0% if it's a brand new language. And then once you start studying, you might get to 5%. And then a month later, you might get to 10%. And then a couple months later, you might get to 15%. And then a couple months later, you might get to 20%. And it's just this gradient of fluency. So don't expect to start studying and then overnight, you're just going to be able to understand everything at once. Because when you're having a conversation, there's really, if you can pick out 20% of the key words of what people are saying in a sentence, generally you can pull the major idea out of what they're trying to convey. So even though, for me especially, understanding when I listen is the hardest part for me right now, which some people it's backwards. Some people, they can understand everything they hear, but they can't speak it at all. I'm the other way around. I can say everything I want at this point to a certain degree. I'd say about 85, I'd say I'm 85% fluent in saying what I want to say. But listening, I'm probably still only at about a 50% fluency. If somebody maybe even a little bit more, maybe I'm not giving myself enough credit, maybe 65% fluency. If somebody's speaking very clear to me, I can understand what they're saying. So it's just this gradient. I tell people look, I've probably got the Spanish of about a 6-year-old child, a 6-year-old boy, right? Because 6-year-old boys talk in very simple concepts. They don't have a very extreme vernacular, right? They're not using all these special filler words. They're going to break a sentence down to its simplest form, and that's what they're going to say. And they can understand simple words, and that's kind of where I'm at. So don't get discouraged if, or just don't go into learning a language thinking one day it's just going to all click and you just know it. It's a gradient and it's going to take time. And just think you're a video game character. You're just leveling up every single day and you're getting another 5% checked off until you reach, you're never going to reach 100% fluency. I'm not 100% fluent in English, and I've been practicing English for 23 years, and there's still words that I don't know. So don't worry about that. Just understand it's a gradient. It's going to take time, and you'll pick it up probably faster than you think you will, as long as you do these steps. So if you guys stay to the end of the video, and I hope you guys appreciated these tips and my wisdom, and let me know what language you want to learn below. Talk soon.